Nau mai ki tā tātou hui. Welcome to the first episode of our hōtaka, of our program Me Upoko Pakaru kia Rite. Today we're going to be taking a look at our first kaupapa, which is basic pronunciation. And just before we get started, I'll just open up with our opening karakia. Nō reira, me noi tātou. Tui ai runga, tui ai raro, tui ai roto, tui ai waho, hui e tai. And just with our opening karakia, essentially we are coming together for the kaupapa today, which is basic pronunciation for our hui. And this karakia essentially ensures that we bring our best selves from a mental, intellectual, spiritual, and a physical perspective, where we bind together and do it for the purpose that we've come together for. So before we get into our interesting fact for our kaupapa today, I'd just like to introduce our my other presenter for this kaupapa, Hinei Haya Murphy. Hinei Haya is a director of Haimata Limited, and she's been a lifelong, or almost a lifelong learner of te reo Māori. Nō reira, nau mai haere mai Hinei Haya.
Tēnā koe te aorangi o kupu taku, tēnā hoki koe I tō whakatau I au, ia tātou e hui ana I tēnei wā mo te reo Māori te take. Tēnā tātou e mātakitaki mai ana, tēnā koe I o hikoinga I tēnei ara reo. Tēnā koe e kaha nei ki te ako I tō tātou reo Māori. Ko Hinei Haya Murphy tōku ingoa no Ngāti Kahungunu ki te Wairarapa, no Ngāti Apa me Ngaitahu. Hoi no kai roto o mātātua waka e noho ana ki te mānuka tūtahi ki whakatāne. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koe.
Tēnā koe. So just moving on to our interesting fact for today. And this is around Māori Language Week, which gets held in September every year, and it's usually the second week of Mahuru, of September. And so our interesting fact for today is Te Wiki o Te Reo Māori, or Māori Language Week, has been celebrated every year since 1975. And there's a lot of history that has gone on prior to the establishment of Māori Language Week, particularly around the Māori Language Act. And the Ngā Tamatoa movement, which happened in the early 1970s, along with a whole lot of the whole process of deracination that happened in the early 1900s. And I'm interested to hear your thoughts, Hinei Haya, around your journey within Te Ao Māori and Te Reo Māori in particular, particularly since 1975, because I understand you weren't a first language learner. Is that correct?
No, that's correct. That's correct. I wasn't, and so I've been in the place that we're all in. Everybody who's watching this webinar is in at the moment. We're taking those first beginning steps to learning Te Reo Māori. I didn't grow up speaking Māori. Born to a Māori father and a Pākehā mother. I was raised in an English-speaking home. I was fortunate to have a kuia, a grandmother who was a native speaker, but unfortunately we didn't live in the same town, so it was rare that, it wasn't frequent that I was staying with her. I didn't stay with her very often, but I was always conscious that she was a Māori speaker and wanted to be able to speak like she did. So there wasn't a lot of opportunity to learn Māori in the home, although we knew we were Māori and we heard Māori every time we were at the marae, and you know, we attended everything at the marae. Funerals, weddings, birthdays, all the things that were happening in the marae. So I was around Te Reo Māori in those instances. Although I'm from an iwi where our language was lost pretty early on in the whole loss of Te Reo Māori over the generations. So yeah, so I had to formally learn the language through the schooling system. Starting when I was probably at intermediate, I think was my first formal language classes. My hunger to speak Te Reo Māori just continued to grow. I knew that it was part of being who I am, and it grew and grew until I wanted to be a teacher of Te Reo Māori and learn Māori through university. I surrounded myself with people who spoke Māori at university and beyond, and that was an important thing to do, to spend time with other people also learning, but also I was fortunate to have access to some very, very good teachers and good language role models. So in those days we didn't have nearly as many language resources around that we do now. I mean, there's Te Reo Māori resources everywhere these days compared with when I was learning in the 70s and 80s, and still am learning, but when I was at those stages of learning. So, you know, and I've just worked at it. It's not easy, but it's something you want to do, then you put that effort in, I guess, and it's become part of my life and who I am. And you know, and we made that decision to raise our children speaking Māori. So Te Aorangi, you're one of the fortunate ones to
I am.
who insisted that you speak Te Reo Māori, and worked through those challenges. So moving from a non-Māori speaking world to try to create a Māori speaking world in a community that doesn't speak Māori has its challenges, and its determination and persistence, the sorts of things that led to Te Wiki o Te Reo Māori being established, and all of those efforts that Ngā Tamatoa, the likes of Ngā Tamatoa, put in back in the 70s in order to get Te Reo Māori to be recognised with some kind of status and have Te Reo Māori taught through schools. People like me benefited from that. So, yeah.
Just touching on what you're saying that about you benefiting from it, and I think there's a whole generation of people who are my age, or, you know, people of my generation who have also benefited from this movement, where you know, just like it has been with yourself, where you know, my grandfather didn't speak Te Reo Māori, as you alluded to, and there are many others who are like that, and it's been people of our generation's parents who have kind of really brought this language back to I wouldn't say it's quite, you know, right to life yet, you know, real to life yet, but we're at a situation where it's looking much better than it was, you know, 30, 40, 50 years ago. And we will touch a little bit more on the history of Te Reo Māori in our next episode on Mihi Mihi, where we'll have Uekaha Douglas join us, and he'll share a little bit about his story as well, in growing up in Te Reo Māori, and can talk a little bit more to that. Nō reira, tēnā koe.
Kia ora.
And we'll move on to our kaupapa for this webinar, which is on basic pronunciation. And I just want to hand over to Mama to start off this kaupapa around basic pronunciation by just taking a quick look at some of the differences that you will notice between Te Reo Māori and Te Reo Pākehā.
I think if we have a look at the text that's showing in front of us at the moment, and you know, you will have seen Te Reo Māori written down before, whether it's on signage or being able to access something written in Te Reo Māori. But have a look at the couple of sentences that are there at the moment in front of you, 2 sentences in Te Reo Māori and 2 sentences in English, and have a look at what the differences are. How do you know that those first 2 sentences are Te Reo Māori sentences? What are the things in them that tell us this is Māori, this is not English, it's not German, it's not any other language, but it's Māori? So if we have a look at it, there are some obvious differences. For example, in the English, we've got some letters like F and S, Y, D, L, those sorts of letters that you don't see in that Māori language example. Some of the other differences that you might notice are the last letters in every word. The last letter of any Māori word is always a vowel.
You don't see that in Te Reo Pākehā, do you?
No, there aren't nearly as many words in English that finish in vowels. You've got a couple there. You've got the word you and to, but a lot, and like, but a lot of words in English finish in consonants. In Māori, that's one of the rules of a Māori word, is that it finishes with a vowel. And in fact, nearly every second letter is a vowel or if there aren't two vowels together. So you don't ever have two consonants together, as you have in the English, where you've got the LD, the two Fs. We don't have two consonants appear in Māori together unless, and we'll talk about this a little bit further down, there's only two times when that happens, and you can see that in the Māori version there, where you've got the NG, which is what we call a digraph. It makes a single sound. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but there's only two exceptions to that rule, and that's the NG and the WH. But otherwise, whenever there is a consonant, there's a vowel that follows. So you can have a look at that. The K, the first word, KEI, consonant is K, there has to be a vowel following it.
And just coming back to what's been highlighted, as you can see here, we've got two Fs together, we've got TH, we've got an SH, like you're saying, and then if we just highlight the NG that we see in Te Reo Māori, as you said, there are only two.
There's two.
Two letters, essentially, where, or two times or situations where you'll see two consonants together, which is the NG and the WH, which we will touch on shortly.
Yeah, so there are some signs of that tell us that that's Te Reo Māori, and those are some of the things how we know that that's Te Reo Māori. It's got those rules about it. The last letter of every word is a vowel. The only two times where we have consonants together are with NG and WH. Therefore, every other consonant always has a vowel follow it. But you can see that sometimes we have multiple vowels together. Yeah.
And then, so these are some of the things that we'll start to get a little bit more used to as, you know, over the course of this kaupapa, of this pōtaka, of the program. These sorts of things that you'll start to notice throughout.
Yeah. We haven't mentioned the macrons. So the little lines that you see above some of the vowels, they're called a macron, M-A-C-R-O-N, or in Māori we call it a tohu tō, and they appear on vowels sometimes, and we'll talk a little bit more about what they do to that vowel as well, but we don't have that type of way of writing in English, but in Māori it's an important part of the language, a very important part of the language actually, and affects the way that we say the words.
Very much. If we take a look, if we move on from our two sentences, and we start to look at some of the types of letters that we see in Te Reo Māori and in Te Reo Pākehā. Mama, did you want to touch a little bit on on the letters in the English alphabet, and then we'll move on to the Māori alphabet?
Well, everybody will be familiar. You'll be familiar with these letters of the English alphabet. We all know what the letters are. There's 26 of them in the English alphabet, and those are the letters that make up all of the English words. In a Māori alphabet, the Arapu Reo Māori, we don't need that many letters to say all the things that we need to say. The only letters we need are those ones that are circled here. There's 13 of them there, so you can see that the ones that we've got crossed out here, those don't exist in Te Reo Māori. There's no B, C, D, F, G, J, L in that form in Te Reo Māori, but what we do have are these letters circled here.
So if we take these,
Okay. As well as these letters, we have some other letters as well, which are these 5 vowels again, but they come with a macron on them. So they are almost like different letters, even though they are those same vowels, R, E, or U. We have them in short form and in long form. So the macrons make them a long form of that vowel. So essentially we have those 13 basic letters, the A, E, H, I, K, M, N, O, P, R, T, U, and W. But we also have these additional 5 vowels that are long vowels. We have another couple of clusters of letters. I mentioned them earlier, the NG and the WH, and they act like a single letter. They're called digraphs. They make a single sound and they act like a normal letter would act. So in total, we have, I suppose we can count them up, and we have like 20. 20 letters. Those original 13 at the top there, the additional 5 vowels, long vowels, and the 2 digraphs, the NG and the WH. That makes up the Arapu Reo Māori, the Māori alphabet.
Karawe, and just to touch on what you're saying around the vowels, around A, E, I, O, U, and then the additional letters we have. I was actually reading Kiri Opai's new, recently released book on tikanga Māori, which is an introduction to Te Ao Māori, and we'll touch on this book a little bit further in our tikanga episode. But the way he describes it, or the way he describes it to Pākehā, so that they, or to learners of Te Reo Māori, in order that they understand these vowels slightly easier, he explains it as though it's 5 letters. It's A, E, I, O, U, and they can all be pronounced in short form and in long form. And I think that's quite a good way of summarizing these types of letters.
It is. What I can say about macrons and tohito is that to not have them where they should be is almost like writing with a spelling error in English. So while they are the same letter, the importance of them is that to not put a macron on where it should be is like incorrectly spelling a word. It also can change its meaning significantly. So there is a really important role for a macron. It's not just about sound. Sometimes that letter does make a huge difference to the meaning of the word. Keke is an example. You know, keke, K-E-K-E, that can mean cake. Keke, short air sound. Keke, with a long sound on the letter E, so K macron E, K macron E, means armpits. Now, you don't want to get those two muddled up. Nobody wants to be eating a keke. They want to be eating a keke. So, you know, there are some really important things to know about macrons and getting them right, writing them right. So, yeah.
Awesome.
Right.
So if we take our letters that we had our initial 13, and we add the 5 additional vowels plus the 2 digraphs that we had on the right hand side, we end up with Te Arapu Reo Māori, which contains 20 letters, as Mama said. We've got the A, the E, and we'll touch a little bit more on the pronunciation of these vowels. And consonants. So if we actually look at the vowels here, Mama, did you want to take us over a little bit of the pronunciation of some of these vowels and the differences in particular around short vowels and long vowels?
Yeah. So, and if you're listening, say them along with me if you can. So I'll say it once and then I'll give you a chance to say it too. So the first one, the letter A is pronounced A. Like in the word appear or allowed. So let's say it together. A.
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 Okay. The A, letter A with a macron on it, is a longer A sound, and it's more like the sound we make when we say the word car, how that is drawn out. So we want A. Say it with me. A. Let's try that again. A.
A.
Okay. The E is like, or the letter E, is like the word, the sound that you make when you say the word entry, that entry, right? So it's a short sound, Say it with me, Okay. The letter E with a macron on it is a longer sound, like you would say when you, excuse me, say the word lead. Lead. It's the in the lead word. So we'll say Kapai. Say it with me. Kapai. We've got H like we do in English. The letter I, the other vowel here, I, we say E for that. That makes a sound E, as in eat. As in eat. So E.
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 It sounds very much like the Pākehā pronunciation of the letter E, doesn't it?
Of the letter E, yes, that's right. Kei te tika, that's right. When you put a macron on the letter I, it draws it out. It's a long E sound, like you say in the word P or C or T. All right, it's the E sound. Try that. E. Okay. The next vowel, the letter O, we say or, like as in the word ordinary. Or. Try that. Or. So shape your mouth like you're saying the word ordinary, but we just want the or of ordinary. Or. Okay. When it's got a macron on it, it's a longer sound again, as with all of the vowels that have got macrons on them. So we want to say or, as you say in the word raw or paw of an animal, or the word pork. It's the or sound. Or. Try that. Or. Can't play. The oo is a short oo sound, right? Like to. Like to. I went to the shop. Oo. That oo sound. Try that. Oo. Oo. With a macron, it's a longer oo sound, like you would say in the word crew. It's the oo of crew. Try oo. Kapai. So those are our vowels. Let's say them together. Oh, sorry. Moving on to consonants.
Sorry.
Stay with our vowels for a second. Let's go over all of them. We'll do the short vowel followed by the long vowel. Let's say them together. A, e, e, o, oo. Kapai. Well done. All right, let's have a look at the consonants. The consonants make the same sounds as they do in English. So you've got h, k, m, n. Let's leave the ng for a minute. P, r, t, and w. Not quite the same. So the h, k, m, n, and p are all good. We all say those sounds in English, and they're the same sounds. The differences are when it comes to the R, we have a rolled R sound, which is like a soft D, I guess. It's a rolled R like a soft D, such as in the word header, the header of a page. Header, it's that D kind of sound in the word header, or judder, a judder bar, judder, the D. So it's a soft sort of a D sound. So if you're in doubt on how to say, if you can't roll your R, if you're having problems rolling your R, my tip would be to make a very soft D sound in its place. Similarly, for the T in English is more front of your mouth. T, it makes a T sound. In Māori, it's a more dull, it's a duller sound. And depending on the vowel that follows it, if it's an R, E, or O, it has quite a dull sound. So it's ta, te, to, almost like a soft D again, where you put your tongue behind your front teeth. Ta, te, to, ta, te, to, ta, te, to.
Ta, te, to.
Hapai, ta, te, to. When the letters after them are the letter I, the E sound in Māori, or the letter U, the U, the U sound in Māori, the T has a slight, it's an aspirated sort of a T. It's got a slight S sound to it. So T-I becomes T.
T.
T. And TU becomes two. So
Two.
you can hear a slight S sort of sound to it. The ng, the NG, like in singer. The WH used to be like a wh, as in whisper. It's more like a f now. Although some Northland Taitokerau people still would say hua, as in whakarongo.
Whakarongo.
But the rest of us say f, as in whakarongo.
Karawe.
Okay.
So if we do, if
Right.
we get some of these place names, maybe if Mama takes one on the left and I'll pronounce the one on the right, and we can go through some of the pronunciation of some common place names that you'll hear on an everyday basis.
Okay, let's try. So you know this one on the left there, Parapara-umu, Parapara-umu. Remember the R is almost like a soft D. Parapara-umu, Parapara-umu. Try and say that. Parapara-umu.
Parapara-umu. Okay. Now if we take a look at the one on the right, which is the Māori word for Auckland, or the Māori place name for Auckland, which is three parts. Tāmaki Makaurau. And just like with the R, it is a soft D sound, so it's Tāmaki Makaurau. You want to say it with me? Tāmaki Makaurau.
Okay. These are another couple of words that are often mispronounced, a couple of place names. Often hear them said in all sorts of interesting ways. But let's look at the one on the right, on the left, sorry. Taupo. 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 Remember that O at the end isn't an O sound, it's an O sound. It's an O sound, like in roar. Taupo. The T-A-U is like the toe on your foot. Taupo. So like the toe on your foot and the paw of a dog. Taupo. Taupo.
Taupo. What are we? The next one on the right we have is tauranga. And it's the same with the R there. It's a soft D. And the ng for the NG. Ng. Tauranga.
The thing about that, I guess, is the ranga part. Often we hear that people say like an O, wronga, tauranga. It's tauranga. It's an R sound, tauranga.
Ranga.
Tauranga. Okay. This couple here, the Māori word for the place name for Wellington, Māori place name for Wellington is Te Whanganui a Tara. Te Whanganui a Tara.
Te Whanganui a Tara.
Te Whanganui a Tara. Okay.
Now another word on the right, our word on the right is, or our place name on the right is Taranaki, which is around New Plymouth, the area around New Plymouth. Taranaki. Can you say it with me? Taranaki.
Couple more. Waikanai. Waikanai. Softer sound at the end. So you can see we've got the Y. So we make that Y sound. Y. Like the word Y in English. And then kanai. And the end of it is softer than the I that you see in the Y part. So AI makes a harder sound, Y, than the AE sound, which is a softer sound. Waikanai. Waikanai.
Waikanai.
Waikanai. Waikanai.
Waikanai. And just up the coast from Porirua or from Pōneke, you'll find Paikakariki. Paikakariki. And just notice that we do have our lengthened vowel just after the K. So we have the pai, kakariki.
Two more Wellington places. Tina kori, you can hear the t, the tina kori, the difference with the T-I when the I's after the T, the letter I, tina kori. And the soft D sound for the R, tina kori.
Tina kori.
Tina kori.
And our final place name just on the right hand side here is karori. Just the same with the R, it's a soft D, karori.
Karori.
Karori. And if you do want to practice some more place names, there's a fantastic book that has been released in the last couple of years by Rite, A.W. Rite, on Māori place names, and you can pick it up at all major bookstores. And it talks a little bit about the meanings and also the origins of all these place names as well. All place names in Aotearoa. So don't forget to grab a copy if you wish. Now, we've talked about some of the individual vowels as they sit in there, sit singularly, where we have a, e, or u by themselves, and also the long vowels. But we also have these things in the Māori language, and they're not just in Māori language; they're in all languages, including or multiple languages, including English, which is where we see two vowels sit next to each other, what we call karapipiti in te reo Māori, where the two vowels sit next to each other. And so I'll get Mama to run over a couple of these examples that we can see here. We've got all the different types of diphthongs that you'll see in te reo Māori, where they're sitting all the combinations of two letters that you'll find, other than with lengthened vowels as well.
Okay, so the unlike in English where letters take on different sounds depending on where they sit in a word, that doesn't happen in the same way in te reo Māori. And generally speaking, the vowels maintain their same sound. So A and E together, as we've got in the first diphthong there, the letter A and E, still maintains the A, E sound, but when it's rolled together, it becomes I. When we say the A, I sound together, the R is still the same and the E is still the same. I. R and O together makes an ow sound. Ow. Ow. And the quicker you say it, the more blended the sound becomes. So we're over-pronouncing them at the moment, really, really shaping those words, those sounds. Ow. But when we say it more quicker, it becomes ow. Ow. The AU makes an O sound together. O, 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 O. So it makes like the letter O in English, in the English language, it makes an O sound. EA makes an air sound. Air. 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 The EI sound makes an interesting combination together. And it becomes more like the A sound in English. It's A. It's like an A sound in English, as in K or Ray or May. All right. So EI makes an A sound. L maintains its E and L sound together. L. Ew. E and U sound together quickly. Ew. Ea is pronounced ea. Try and say that. Ea.
Yeah.
The e sound. Yeah. Almost like a Y. Yeah. io, io, io,
Io.
io. Try it again. Io.
Io.
Bye. The next one, you, you, you,
Iu.
you, you. Bye. Or,
Or.
as in hoa. You would have heard people say hoa for friend or mate. Hoa, it's or. Oe, oe, oe,
Oi.
oe.
Oi.
Compared with the next diphthong, which is oi, which is oi.
Oi.
Much sharper sound. Oi,
Oi.
oi.
I imagine some of us may already be a little bit accustomed to that combination. Oi.
All right. The letter O and U. O,
O.
O, O,
O.
O. As in the word koutou, tēnā koutou. You get the OU, K-O-U, ko, O. So it's the O and U together. Said quickly, O. Right, ua, ua. It's a bit easier. Ua, ua,
Ua.
ua. Compared with the next one, which is a little bit more difficult. Ue, 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 ue,
Ue.
ue. And the one next to it, we. It's like we, ui.
Ui.
Makes like a W-E sound, we, ui. As in hui, hui. Uo, 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 uo. It's not a sound that you hear a lot, but you do hear it in Māori. There are Māori words with the uo sound in them. So those are the diphthongs when you put two vowels together. They just take a bit of practice.
They do.
Practicing. And sometimes we get more than two letters together. This is the triphthongs, three vowels together. And they still maintain their same sorts of sounds. But if you know the diphthongs, it makes it slightly easier. So the first word there has got a, e, and a together. That makes an aya sound. Like in my name, Hine Ihaya. This one is thaya. This word is thaya.
Thaya.
Soft E sound, thaya. Thaya. Try and say thaya.
Thaya.
The next word, three letters, the letter A, I, O. Have a think about how you might say that if you were to see it. We pronounce it ayo, ayo. It's got a long A on it. It's got the macron, so it's a long A, ayo, ayo. You may know this place from Tai Tokedo up north, Kaio. It's a softer E sound in the middle than the previous Ayo. This is Kaio.
Kai.
Kaio. Remember the O sound at the end, not an O sound. Kaio. Kaio. Right, here we go with where we've got four vowels together. So this still maintains their sounds together. So in this first one, we've got the AI together, which we know makes the sound I, and we've got the AO together, which makes the sound ow, ow. So it's tai ow, tai ow, tai ow, tai ow,
Thayao.
tai ow.
You can really hear the blending. You can really hear the blending of the vowels as you say it faster and faster. You know, it goes from thayao to thayao.
Thayao.
It all becomes a bit of a match.
Sound. Yeah, thayao. Right, when you've got a diphthong together, two sounds together, they make a single syllable, I suppose. So, you know, this is a two-syllable word, thayao, thayao.
Thayao.
Yeah. And with the next one, you've got the two diphthongs together, the AU, which makes the O sound, O, O, and the AE, which makes the I sound, I. So it's ko-I, 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 ko-I. Right, and the last word there, the kupu Māori, the Ingoa Māori for Mount Maunganui, Moao, Moao. It's got the AU, the O sound, and the AO, the AO sound, AO.
Oh,
It's Moao, Moao.
and just for those of you who may be looking at the slide thinking, I wonder what those words mean. So taiao is a word for the environment. It can be used to it's a noun, and it talks about, and it means your environment. And kowai means your jaw or your chin, this sort of area of your face. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Another couple of examples of place names that have got diphthongs in them that we've already visited or said before, but te whanga nui, 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 te whanga nui atara, te whanga nui atara. Why can I? Why can I? Pai kakariki, pai kakariki.
I think it's really good to practice the place names around, particularly those that where you live. So if you are in Wellington, places like Paraparaumu, which also has a diphthong there, Paraparaumu, Waikanai, Pai Kakariki. There are many other examples, Porirua. There are many examples of place names around where you would live. So just search those out and have a little look at, collate them, and it's important to ensure that we can pronounce our place names properly.
Goodbye. All right, just some common words or common phrases that you will hear every day or that you might want to use. You'll know this one, kia ora. Kia ora. We've got a few cheap tips there, I guess, in written phonetically. So if you're having problems saying it, kia ora, kia ora.
Kia ora.
Yeah, like a soft D sound with the O-R-A, ora, ora, kia ora.
And we are going to touch on the pronunciation of some of these words or greetings in our later episode on pronunciation in a few weeks' time.
Okay, this is how's it, or how are you doing? How are things? Here we've got the EI together. It makes an A sound. A. So it's kei te pē hea. Kei te pē hea. Kei te pē hea. Right, and the E for the pē hea is a long air sound. Pē hea. Kei te pē hea.
Kei te pē hea.
And I'm good. Kei te pai au. Kei te pai au.
Kei te pai au.
Kei te pai au.
And so if I was to ask Mama, and if we take the second and third lines of this, of what's on our slides here, and I was to ask her, how is she, or how are you, or how's it, and she was to come back with, I'm good, I would ask, kei te pē hea, and she would respond with,
Kei te pai au. Kei te pai au.
So next time you're in the tari, in your office, or you're just at home, ask your friend, ask your hoa, kei te pē hea.
Kei te pai au.
Okay. Tēnā koe Iera, Iera kōrero. Thank you very much for guiding us through through the pronunciation. And we have got some supporting resources which will be available on your Moodle platform, which are some external resources that we recommend, which are from Te Taurawhiti. So as you can see, on the right hand side here, they've put out a pronunciation guide, and realmaori.co.nz have many resources focused around things such as pronunciation, basic and simple words that you can use in and around the office, Zoom terminology, all sorts. And so I encourage you to check that out. But a couple of the ones that we've linked here for you today are Te Taurawhiti's pronunciation guide, and another one on 100 Māori words every New Zealander should know. And I think that's a really good list of some very commonly used words in Te Reo Māori. And I encourage you all to practice the pronunciation, keeping in mind some of the vowel sounds and some of the consonant sounds and the diphthongs. that we've been going over, or that we have gone over today. And there is also a video here that you can watch, which is from realmaori.co.nz or Te Kaura Whiri. And they have a YouTube channel which contains a playlist, a pronunciation playlist, where you can find 5 or 6 different videos on there looking at things such as ta, te, ti, like we talked about earlier. So if you do wish to have a look at that, you can scan the QR code that's right there, and that'll take you straight into the YouTube playlist. Just before we finish our kaupapa for today, I might get Mama to take you over our learning tip for today, and I'll talk a little bit more to something that you may find in Moodle, or that you will find in your Moodle, that will help you with this learning tip.
Kia ora, te aorangi. One of the best things to start doing is at the stage in your journey is make sure that you keep a glossary, make sure you keep a word list, and update it each time you hear a new word that you want to learn. So at this stage, put the priority on words that are commonly used, high frequency words that we use a lot. Don't worry too much about words that are very technical or are only heard rarely, but there are some words that will get you a long way. So make those a priority in your glossary. Words like mahi, work, or haere, go, things like that, everyday sorts of words that you can use often, that you hear often, and put those into your glossary. We've got, Te Aore's going to mention it shortly, but we've got a bit of a template that we're going to put up on Moodle for you to use if you haven't got your own system, and if you want one that you've got on your computer. But otherwise, grab yourself a little notebook. Think about how you're going to set the words out. Don't just write them in randomly, because you'll never be able to find them again once you get lots of words. So think about what would be most useful, whether you put them in alphabetical order or whether you put them certain types of words together. Whatever's going to work for you is what you need to do. But start collating words that you can look over when you've got 5 minutes spare sometime, to keep revisiting words. That's really important when you're wanting to learn vocab. It's the frequency of which you see the word, hear the word, use the word that matters. So start collecting words, start a glossary.
We hope you've learned a couple of new words in our session today. We have said a few new words, and like Mama said, there is a glossary template on Moodle for you to download that you can start using and just populating. At the start of every learning task, throughout the duration of our program, you will find a vocab list of about 9 or 10 different or new words that you can use in your everyday conversations, and that you will hear quite frequently. We do also have a session later on, or a webinar later on in the program on what we call New Zealand vernacular, or some commonly used Māori words that get popped into English sentences. And some of those words will get you a long way in te reo Māori. Ka pai. Now, just before we close up with our closing karakia, is there anything else you'd like to say, Mama, to our learners out there who are just starting on their real journey, or any other final pronunciation tips?
No, I just encourage you to keep on. There'll be ups and downs, and the most important thing is, me upoko Pakaru, keep going, give it heaps, kia ora, and welcome along the journey.
Karawe. O tēnā koe I o kōrero I te rangi nei, Mama. Thank you very much for all that you've shared with us today. I'm sure it's been greatly appreciated. I've certainly appreciated it. We look forward to seeing you on our next webinar next week, where we will be touching on mihi mihi, and we'll have Uekaha Douglas join us to take us through some mihi mihi and the process of mihi mihi and whakatau. So before we close our session, I'm just going to do our closing karakia. Nō reira, me no I tātou. Tēnā whakairia te tapu, kia wā te a I te ara, kia turu ki whakatahai, kia turu ki whakatahai, āmine.
Āmine.
Tēnā koutou katoa, hei kona.